Well met, and welcome to Week 4, Day 3 of the Hearthstone Global Games. My name is Robert Wing, and back from her gallivanting in DreamHack in Austin, Texas, Cora. We tried to fill in, we tried to make the best show we could without you, but it wasn't the same, so welcome back.
Thank you very much, Rob. As I seem to recall, you were also in Texas at DreamHack Austin.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
It's
Hopefully
just weird that I found
too.
time to cast Global Games. You didn't?
You know, Rob, different schedules for different people.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you
my
back.
days were arguably a little bit longer than yours. I don't know. You know, call times and whatnot.
Well, before this gets too off the rails, let's go ahead and take a look at the format for the Hearthstone Global Games. We are currently right in the middle of Stage 1 here, which is 8 groups of 6 teams participating in a 10-week round robin. We're starting to see some of these teams rise up and get ready to progress into Stage number 2, which is going to be 6 groups of 4 teams in a 3-week round robin. The name of the game, though, is making it to that all-important Stage 3, which is a 16-team single elimination. Ending in a top 4, advancing to a LAN finals taking place later this year. Well, of course, we'll know who is in fact the greatest country in the tavern.
It is going to be a marathon of a tournament, but we are certainly already quite a bit of a ways through Stage 1, and it's going very well so far. And we can actually take a look at how well it is going for these countries. So Group A, we've seen quite a bit of. My pick, Brazil, sitting at 1-1, but Bulgaria sitting pretty at 2-1.
Yeah, if you told me that early on in a group with China and Sweden, Bulgaria would be number 1, I would have said that's just crazy talk. But Bulgaria doing work here with that 2-1 record, actually beating Sweden in a best-of-5 just this past weekend. Taking a look at Group B, what do you know? What is that? Ooh. United States 3-0.
Is that stripes and stars?
In some collection of, basically that's what that is. What we see there, United States 3-0. Romania down 0-3, unfortunately. Now, I want to point out, shout out to Romania. That was a really tight series between Romania and the United States. The United States clutched it out with a patches off the top to win the game. So shout out to Romania. Even though they're 0-3, it's not as if they're not putting out work there.
And then, of course, Group C, which we are going to see Argentina up against New Zealand is our first match today. Russia, no surprise, 2-0. They are definitely one of the powerhouses. Even a bigger story from this is that Australia is down 0-2. They've got a lot of ground to make up, but Argentina versus New Zealand is the name of the game today.
Yeah, it's going to be a great series. Taking a look at Group D now, Slovakia and Hungary tied for first place in Group D. South Korea, we will be seeing later tonight taking on Hong Kong. They're currently at 1-1 after suffering a 3-0 defeat against Slovakia.
Yeah, that was a surprising one. I don't think anybody really saw that coming, including South Korea. And I know you actually spoke to some of the players on that team today, and they are ready to come back and come back strong because they definitely faltered in their match against Slovakia.
Yeah, work to do for South Korea. Taking a look now, Group E, Italy, Mamma Mia, 2-0. What a spicy team.
It absolutely is, Rob. Israel also picked up a win this week. Japan and Finland tying them so far with a 1-1 match record.
Yeah, we see Chile with work to do over in Group F. My pick to win the whole tournament, Canada up 2-0, tied with Malaysia for first. So shout out to Malaysia, one of those teams coming in. M8 Gaming really behind them, pushing them and making them great. So Malaysia doing work here. We see Kazakhstan, unfortunately, at the bottom, 0-3. Going to be very difficult now to get out of the group, if even possible. Group G, though, Turkey up 2-0.
Yeah, they've been doing fantastic so far. Not a lot of really huge names in this group, I would have to say. Maybe a bit of a sleeper group. Taiwan and Poland doing well, and we saw Mexico with a pretty exciting game of their own a couple weeks back.
Yeah, when it comes to sleepers, no need to talk about Ukraine and Czech Republic because they are the favorites here in this group, along with the United States currently having the only 3-0 records. Now, Ukraine coming in here top 5 team on paper, easy, absolutely expected to advance all the way to the very end of this tournament. But Czech Republic, we're learning a lot about them in real time, and they're a very strong team. Yeah,
and Germany being down 0-2 certainly is a bit of a surprise. And poor Belarus poor Belarus in Group H.
Yeah. But that's where the groups are thus far. Also worth pointing out that Greece was down 0-2, did manage to get that win versus Portugal if you didn't get a chance to watch the rest of the week of Global Games. So they're now 1-2. If you're out there rooting for Greece, absolutely still hope for them. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on tonight in the Hearthstone Global Games. We cap out Week 4 with a showdown between Argentina and New Zealand and Hong Kong versus South Korea. Now, Argentina in Week 1 did 3-0 Australia, so they can complete their domination of ANZ with a win over New Zealand here.
It would be a poetic victory, but New Zealand can also also come back to bring justice to Australia, who did fall very quickly in the first week against Argentina. And here we can see the lineups for both of these teams. Argentina, we had on our first week of broadcasts. Payensei and Snail are Hearthstone Championship Tour veterans. Nalguidan is a very popular streamer and player. I think actually he just top 8'd at the Copa America tournament just last week. And then Ildemi is no slouch. I think he'll actually be up first for the team today.
Yeah, we see over here in New Zealand now, it's Pathra, Ting Tong, Slayer Max, and Flame Lord. I had an opportunity to talk to Pathra just recently. We actually met up at DreamHack Awesome for the first time, had some dinner. She's a very wonderful person, but we talked a little bit about the team, and, we don't necessarily know too much about New Zealand coming into this. So she kind of told me that she's kind of the brain trust of this team. Obviously, they have some very skilled players, but Pathra is making sure they get the deck lists on time, kind of discussing who's actually submitting what. The team ultimately, has the decision to veto certain decks if they're not feeling comfortable. But
she's doing the technical stuff.
She's making sure that everything gets done. So shout out to Pathra. When I asked her, where she felt that New Zealand fit in all this, she said after the first win, that was really exciting, but she's not ready to declare New Zealand a Tier 1 team just yet. She says maybe after a couple wins, we'll see.
Well, Austria was an impressive team to beat, which they did in their first match of the Global Games. And now if they could take out Argentina, that would be another big win, because Argentina, I would have to say, is top 2 in South America.
Yeah, they've absolutely come out. They got 3-0'd by Spain. But when I talked to Payensei about this, he mentioned that, hey, he was out of town. He wasn't able to play. DreamHack Austin happened. But he feels really comfortable about the team. Now, we're looking up here at the teams and what they're bringing for classes. Cora, why don't you talk a little bit about the official Hearthstone Global Games format?
All right, so it looks pretty complicated. There's a lot going on here, but it really is simpler than it seems. So all 9 classes are divided amongst the 4 players, and then they choose an order in which the 4 players will be lined up with their 2 classes. From then on, it's just a best of 5 blind pick conquest, and if we go to game 5, then one of the players has to be the ace. They come in for a second time, and then they have the choice between the class they did not play previously in the set or that 9th unpicked class.
Yeah, rounding it out, you see the ace match at the bottom. So if you are selected to be the ace player for your team, it's because your team believes that in the clutch, you're going to come through and deliver the series. No surprise to see Payensei. When I was talking to him just recently, he said that in this series, no trash talk intended, he believes that him and Nalguidan are actually the top 2 players in this series overall. So no surprise to see him step up and really kind of want the ball in the clutch. Flame Lord also won his match in the first week. So, not really a surprise to see that for them. Although, I feel like for New Zealand, it could have gone a bunch of different ways in terms of who is that ace player.
Yeah, no obvious ace for New Zealand, but for Argentina, Payensei seems like a solid pick. So no surprises there. And of course, he's coming back from actually not playing in the last week, and Argentina did lose that match, unfortunately. So he's got something to prove now. He's coming back strong, and being the ace, if it goes to game 5, I think Payensei is a great choice.
All right, well, the picks for the first game are in. It is going to be Druid versus Warrior. Now, this is interesting to me because Ting Tong actually in the first week for New Zealand brought Hunter, and he brought a very, I don't want to say very unusual deck actually, but he brought a deck that's a little less streamlined than what we're generally seeing. He had, the Deadly Shot, he had Stranglethorn Tiger, more importantly, he had Flare. Yeah. And he was actually able to use it to beat one of those mages. And, if you're new to the meta right now, every mage deck seems to begin with Ice Block.
Yeah, you just kind of put in, maybe 20 cards and then fit it out from there. But it was about as unusual as a Hunter deck could get. And I figure Ildemi, I'm sure, did his research, knows that there was a Flare in that Hunter deck in their last match, and therefore wisely elected to go with the Druid, which is very strong and cannot be flared.
Kind of wonder how much of a mind game element there is to that, but we see the players getting ready, both of them just hanging out by themselves. Now, that said, they do have help on their VoiceCom platform of choice. They are able to work with the rest of their teams to, figure out what exactly the plays are within those 75 seconds per turn. We've been talking to some of the players as the Hearthstone Global Games have gone on, and most agree that this is a boon and you get very specific benefits from it, but can lead to a little bit of a crowd when you're actually talking through some of the plays.
Yeah, it definitely can. But here we have some fast facts on both of these players. Ildemi, 21 HCT points in 2016, very respectable. Won major tournament victory in Brazil and did compete in the America's Summer Prelims in 2016. And his favorite food is asada, which is a form of barbecue technique, but also refers to the social event of attending a barbecue. Very fitting, seeing as we were in Austin, Texas last week, and barbecue is what they're about.
Yeah, man after my own heart. If there's two things I love, it's barbecue and being social. Now, Ting Tong has competed in every Australia, New Zealand HCT preliminary in 2016, so he's definitely out there trying to make that name for himself, trying to get a little more notoriety. This is definitely a stage where he can do it, and worth pointing out that he's hit Legend every season since December 2014, and nice try, TJ. This was written in April. It's not 28 times. I assume it's 29.
Do we have confirmation that Ting Tong hit Legend last season?
Nope, and I'm sure this will somehow come back to bite me in the butt, but I'm going to go ahead and try to be intuitive and do the math. Either way, both of these players, I think, are actually, compared to each other, they're very similar.
Yeah.
Right? They're both kind of looking for that big splash. They're on teams where there are some bigger names than they are, so very interesting to see this. Again, Ting Tong playing that Hunter in week 1. I kind of wonder for Ildemy when he's deciding whether to play Mage or Druid, how much that factors into his decision. Ting Tong calls audible a little bit and just goes with the Warrior.
Yeah, I think it definitely has a lot to do with Argentina choosing to go with the Druid. It's a lot less easy to counter, especially looking at New Zealand's lineup, and it just lines up quite well against, if this is a Quest Warrior,
Yep.
large Jades will ultimately win any long game control match. So it's just a good choice if it is Jade Druid and it is Control Warrior. Of course, Pirate Warrior can, just swarm and end any game very quickly.
Sure.
So going to be interesting to see, but it makes a lot of sense as to why it's not the Hunter and the Mage.
Well, now it's hard to say what Druid is now. I want to point out, we were talking all throughout the past few weeks about the evolution of Jade Druid. People were missing some key tools and trying to decide how they could make it better, how they could make it more consistent. But Saiyan, a member of Tempo Storm, kind of put out a list that everyone's now saying, okay, this deck is good. It's got the Primordial Drakes. It's got the Earthen Scales. It can survive early game. It's targeted towards late game. Beats Freeze Mages generally. Beats Control Warriors. We are going to see that coming out from Ildemy in the first game here. It is going to be, the telltale signs are there, that this is a Jade Druid. Now,
What
New
do you
Zealand,
mean, Rob? What signs?
Yeah, the thing that makes Jades usually a pretty good indicator. Ting Tong going to be bringing the Pirate Warrior, and we did see the Spellbreaker. That's not that unusual. We are starting to see it more and more. Obviously helps you get through those big taunts and, puts a body that's representing 4 damage. Very interesting to see how this goes. Cora, what is your understanding of the matchup generally between Pirate Warrior and Jade Druid?
So it's actually a lot closer than it used to be. The Druid did not lose a lot of their early game. They did lose Mulch, which means their single target removal is not great, and their AoE has always been pretty poor. But that doesn't affect the Pirate Warrior matchup too much. So the addition of Earthen Scales is going to give them a lot more longevity, and then, of course, they're going to have that traditional early game ramp. So this hand from Ildemy is actually looking very strong. And Pirate Warrior has pretty much remained the exact same post-Ungoro rotation. Yes, you lose Sir Finley Murgleton, so you don't have access to Life Tap and Steady Shot, but you still want to put Pirates on the board early, deal as much damage as possible, end the game as quickly as possible, because the more time you give to the Jade Druid, then the more armor they're going to be able to gain, the more taunt minions they'll be able to pull up, and the less likely it is you'll be able to win the game.
Yeah, unfortunately here for Ting Tong, the early game part of the Pirate deck has yet to show up, still out there on the high seas causing trouble. And, we talked a little bit about how this matchup looks holistically, just, from a top-down view in general, but obviously the draws are really important here. Pirate Warrior wants to get on the board early, wants to start going, wants to apply the pressure before the Jade Druid can ramp into having more mana, taunts like Jade Behemoth, Primordial Drake, all those armor-creating spells, and gotta be honest, this is just really a terrible hand for New Zealand.
It's dismal. The late game is as late game as Pirate Warrior gets, to be fair, is definitely there. But a lot of what you need to rely on as the Pirate Warrior is the early game minion damage. So Frothing Berserker, Bloodsail Raider, Bloodsail Cultist. You need to get those minions down to chip away at the life total before you're actually able to close a game with Mortal Strike, Arcanite Reaper, Heroic Strike, which are all great, of course, but not too useful right now. So this is just going to give more time over to the Jade Druid, which I think has become just even better equipped at dealing with aggro since Ungoro came out, specifically because of Earthen Scales.
I think this deck is flying a little bit under the radar in terms of just how powerful it is. When we actually got to the finals of the DreamHack Austin Hearthstone Grand Prix, we saw both players. That was Mr. Lego and Shoop. Shout out to Shoop. Congratulations once again on the win. Shoop! They actually banned out this Druid deck because it is just absolutely menacing to deal with. And, it's a deck aimed towards ramping up and going later. But if you just get like one piece of ramp even, and you have some, you have Jade Spirits, you have Jade Behemoth, Jade Idols, whatever, we're rapidly seeing here, Ildemy is just already, prior to this Corcoran Elite, just getting ahead of the Pirate in terms of board state.
Yeah, you have to give so much respect over to this Jade Druid. Obviously, Last Hero Standing and Conquest are very different formats, so there's no real blowout potential for the Druid. Your entire team can't lose to just Jade Druid.
Right.
But certainly it's something that you need to keep in mind. And while I think the Pirate Warrior is positioned reasonably well with a good draw against the Jade Druid, looking at the position of this game right now, it's definitely going into Argentina's favor. Looking forward with Jade Behemoth and then Nourish for additional draw.
Yeah.
Jades are already at 4-4 going into 5-5 on turn 6. I mean, that's pretty good.
I was going to say, you don't need to know a whole lot about Hearthstone to understand why that's a bad thing there.
If you look at raw stats, that's pretty good, Rob.
Ting Tong in a weird place where he kind of has to, and you can see it on his face, he's agonizing about whether or not he feels like he has to trade to try to do something there to stave off the Druid and maybe develop a board later. But again, like everything about this matchup says, hey, you're the aggressor. You know, it'd be something if Argentina just had taunts, but having access to taunts and effective health regeneration, Ting Tong knows exactly what's going on here, and this one for him is already looking really bad.
I mean, there is a world where the Druid has all of their armor generation in the last few cards of the deck, but as we can see here, Ildami has picked up Feral Rage, so we're not living in that world right now. Spellbreaker in hand for Ting Tong, yeah, it's a way to bypass taunt, that's really nice, but ideally you have a board set up when you Spellbreaker a taunt, and you want to put your opponent in that up against the wall position where they just feel like they really have no other option other than to put up a taunt minion, otherwise they're dead. So this is not optimal by any means for Ting Tong, and I think looking at his face, you can definitely see that he's not too happy about the way this one went.
I mean, it's turn 5. The Druid should be dead already. What are the Pirates doing?
What are we doing here?
Yeah, but he's going to go ahead and just play it out. He's talking to the rest of his team, again on voice comms, trying to figure out, you know, what are the possible outs here. And he can, as you pointed out, he can equip the Arcanite Reaper. He can next turn look to get by the Jade Behemoth with a Spellbreaker potentially, but that Druid's at a really healthy life total. And it's just getting to the point now where the Druid is able to do exactly what it wants. And to be honest, has been kind of doing what it wants in terms of curving out with big Jade minions for some time now.
Yeah, I mean, Ting Tong can put on quite a bit of damage here, and over the course of 3 turns, would potentially even be able to kill Argentina. But now Argentina has become the aggressor. Ildami is putting New Zealand on a clock. He's saying, I'm going to kill you next turn. I don't need to Feral Rage for armor when I can Feral Rage for 4 damage, and you will be dead.
Yeah, I mean, Ting Tong is like, but I was the aggro deck. It wasn't supposed to go down
kill
like
you
this.
by turn 7. What happened?
Yeah, things took a terrible turn for Pirate Warrior. I mean, now I do want to point out, the Naga Corsair could come out, boost this Arcanite Reaper up to 6, and, you know, in a vacuum, when you just, if all you saw on the board was not health totals, other minions, but if your board just showed your weapon and that Jade Behemoth and Naga Corsair, you're like, well, this lines up, right? We're just going to get past that Jade Behemoth and that taunt's dead, everything's fine, right?
Rob, I just feel like this is the point in the movie where the record scratches and you hear, I bet you wonder how I got here.
Yeah.
And then you go back, you're like, 2 days before. In this case, 6 turns earlier when Ting Tong's mulligan was really, really bad.
All right, see the correct sequencing. Want to point this out. Swinging into the Jade Behemoth to bring himself to 12 HP so that he could use the Mortal Strike to get rid of the Auctioneer. And that's a little bit of fancy footwork, but it might be, a buck late, a day short.
22 damage short in this case.
Yeah, I was going to say, suddenly, turn 8, yeah, easy Druid lethal. That's what happens, when you don't deal with those Jade Golems. And, we talk about aggro decks, and aggro decks have certainly a different place in the tournament meta versus, what you run into on the ranked play ladder. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when you're running into them in the ranked play ladder, they can get those explosive starts and just run you over. But, aggro decks, Hunter, Pirate Warrior, in tournament, they really do have to do exactly what they are designed and built for, which is curve out early, mount the pressure, and just go. And we saw there when Ting Tong and New Zealand weren't able to get that going, the Jade Druid just like, well, I'm going to make some golems here, and I'm going to hit you in the face. So
yeah, and I mean, obviously there's no ban in this tournament, so you have your 2 decks, your opponent has their 2 decks, and you're trying to wager which of these decks is better against what they could possibly pick. I think that the mid-range Hunter probably would have been a little bit better positioned there,
sure.
But Ting Tong's thought process was likely something like, if I give the Jade Druid time, I'm going to lose. Hunter is not as fast as Pirate Warrior, therefore Pirate Warrior has a better chance.
Yep.
And I can't fault him for that, because in a perfect world, the Pirate Warrior puts on so much pressure that the Druid doesn't have time to respond. But that was just, unfortunately, a situation where there was quite literally nothing that Ting Tong could have done differently. And Argentina is going to scoop up game number 1 very quickly.
Yeah, so Argentina jumping out to an early lead. We are going to get into game number 2 here, and it is going to be Pay and Say versus Pathra in the old Paladin showdown. You bring the light, I bring the light, and we'll just see what happens. So
just going to hammer away until one of us is dead.
Yeah, Paladin right now is in a great spot. You know, it kind of stealthily snuck up to really that tier 1, but a lot of the pro players called it early, and then it came to be. Curious to see how much we're going to see in terms of the Murloc package. The Murloc package is really kind of what has made Paladin kind of have that explosive early game. It reminds me a lot of the Muster for Battle shielded minibot days where you were just putting out pressure, durable minions.
Yeah.
But the Murlocs get synergy too. You also just have the Gentle Megasaur, you have the War Leader, so they're in a really good spot. We see them getting ready. Pay and Say with his signature bedhead.
He's got good hair. I mean, you know, I don't know if he does it and if it just always looks like that or if it's a happy accident, but he's got style. You can't deny that.
I rely on your word. I no longer know how good hair exactly works. So
I mean, I look at Brian Kibler and I'm like, okay, that. And then I look at Frodan and I'm like, but then there's that. And then I look at you and then there's nothing.
Yeah.
So I just don't know anymore.
It's actually invisible hair. Thank you. But let's get to know these players a little bit better here. We see Pay and Say, as you mentioned at the beginning of this match, no stranger to competition. We've seen him at the Hearthstone Championship Tour. I believe it was in the Summer Series. He brought out that Dragon Warrior that everyone was kind of talking about at the time with the N'Zoth's first mate. It was really curved in early, a little bit more aggressive. You know, he's all over the place in Copa America. Copa America, of course, being the competitive circuit for the LATAM players. They just had the finals this past weekend.
Yeah.
So, this is a guy who's out there, and, you know, he definitely thinks coming into this that LATAM can kind of prove themselves on the global stage, which is really what the Hearthstone Global Games is all about, is bringing these countries together who wouldn't normally play against each other.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see. And then here we have Pathra. She had 4 top 200 Legend finishes in 2016 and earned 26 HCT points throughout the year, so really impressive pedigree from Pathra. Streams regularly on Twitch. She's very popular, has nearly 15,000 followers, and has casted Hearthstone tournaments in Southeast Asia as well. So if we're not careful, she's going to come over and take our job, Rob.
Yep.
And then her favorite place to visit, New Zealand, is Milford Beach because of the childhood memories she has there. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think she's currently based in France, actually.
I believe so, yeah.
And she was at DreamHack Austin last week, which means she does a lot of traveling. And hopefully she's had enough time to put into really perfecting her Paladin game, because Pay and Say is a tough opponent.
Yeah, you know, Pathra has in general, as an individual, just always impressed me from the way she utilizes her time. I mean, Pathra's doing a lot of different things. She stays extremely competitive in Hearthstone, always playing at the highest level. You know, she's someone who's generally, once the deck lists have been figured out, that's when she's like, all right, I'm going to pick them up. I'm going to learn them. She's not necessarily that involved in the deck building process, but she leverages that time to great effect. She's a streamer. You know, with New Zealand, when I spoke to her, she even just kind of said, like, I'm just making sure, you know, that the gears are turning, everyone's getting things done. Paladin versus Paladin, though. Generally speaking, there's the adage with a lot of decks where when you have a mirror, the quicker one is generally favored to kind of get out in front. You know, it was always that way with Hunter, right, back in the day. With Paladin, though, do you feel it's the same, or do you feel there's like a little more nuance to it?
It's going to depend on what the nature of the mirror is. So if you have an aggressive Murloc mirror, yes, the deck that gets on board first and is able to land a really solid Gentle Megasaur will usually just be able to blow that one out. But like we saw at the finals of DreamHack Austin, if it's a control Paladin mirror, then usually the slower deck, the deck with more value, is actually going to win. So Shoot played a N'Zoth control Paladin build, which was just about as greedy and as slow for Paladin as you possibly could get, and it just blew Dog's Paladin out of the water, which was very control-oriented, but when you looked at it in comparison to Shoop's, it just did not have the value that it needed to beat Shoop's deck in the long game. So if we see an aggressive mirror, faster deck's going to win. If we see a slow control mirror, the one with more value is going to win. But it looks like it's going to be aggressive.
Yeah, that N'Zoth Paladin that Shoot brought, everyone was kind of head scratching in the audience, because in the past,
even he was.
N'Zoth Paladin, you know, it certainly surfaces every so often, and it's like, oh, this is a really good idea. You have a lot of heavy control cards. You have Alder Peacekeeper to keep the board. You get to bring out the big N'Zoth. It's going to bring back Cairn. Back in the day, it brought out Sylvanas, and it's always been something that people kind of work with, but it's really difficult to actually make work against more aggressive decks because it requires very specific answers at specific points. So I'm not surprised to see people haven't necessarily bought in even with Shoop's success. And yeah, to your point, we're going to see the Paladin variant with the Murlocs. And the big question now is kind of how deep does the Murloc variant run? And we did see with Pathra that she's committed to bringing Finja. So Finja is definitely a sign that she's really all in on the Murloc play.
Yeah, I think that is a really solid choice if ever you have a Murloc package in your deck. Obviously, if we're just looking at Pei-Say's build, he has the Tide Caller. He's likely going to have the Cold Light Seer, so some less valuable Murlocs that he could pull off of Finja. But even still, just getting down a Finja, pulling 2 Murlocs, and then being able to Gentle Megasaur for +3 attack or Wind Fury or Divine Shield is going to be value enough. So I think likely we'll see Finja in both of these decks. But these Paladin decks are really interesting in that they start very aggressive, and then they switch to a more mid-range control plan, moving from 6 mana onward. So you usually see Sunkeeper Tarim, Curator, Stampeding Kodo, Primordial Drake, and then it tops out at Tyrion, and occasionally Rag Lightlord. So
don't forget Spikeridge Steed. How could
I forget good old Steed?
Ooh, that's a spicy card right there.
That's a good one.
I've been enjoying some Spikeridge Steed just lately. It's such a powerful card, and realistically, when it was being shown up, a lot of us were just kind of like, well, you got to have a minion on board.
Yeah, but it is a pile of stats and taunts, which is great at shutting down aggressive decks like Murloc Paladin.
And it goes really well into a deck where you're just constantly putting out minions in the form of Murlocs. So we are seeing a little bit of minion combat on the board. One Murloc comes out, kills the other. It's just Murloc on Murloc crime. But those are kind of the opening blows of this matchup.
Somebody call the Gadgets and police. This is horrible to see.
I was going to say, the Gadgets and guards. Cord, did you ever play World of Warcraft? I feel like we've had this conversation before.
No, but if I recall correctly from the cinematic, the gangs rule the streets. So I don't know that the cops are really shutting down all the swindlers and cheats, if you know what I'm saying.
There are guards in Gadgets, and they are neutral, though, but they do, when you attack each other, they will actually show up and start
that's fair.
ruining your fun. But I think they go to sleep like once a year. There's actually an event for it. Yeah, but
to be fair, in aggressive mirrors, the early game is always going to be a battle for the board. Whoever gets a minion to stick is going to have the advantage. So that's what we're seeing here. You can't just, put it all out there and just go face.
Yeah, so Hydrologist here, very interesting because the options all kind of represent different ways you can approach how that battle for the board goes. And Noble Sacrifice is really just the cleanest. You're going to absorb an attack for me. That could be very big when it comes to trade implications. So I do like it there. There wasn't anything necessarily great to Redemption. Obviously, it's just the Hydrologist right now. And Repentance can be good a little bit later on when you want to take something big like a Primordial Drake or a Sunkeeper Tarim or even a Tyrion and make it less of a factor. So Noble Sacrifice there, really good, and that helps him battle for the board.
Yeah, it absolutely gives him that much more of an advantage in the early game, even more so than Pathra unfortunately having to use her coin and Bluegill on turn 1 just to take out that Murloc Tidecaller that automatically has set her on the back foot because now Pei-Say not only has board control, but he has mana advantage. So if he can go ahead and just steamroll this with that second Tidecaller that he's just picked up, then unless Pathra picks up a Consecration and a timely board clear at that, because if Pei-Say gets War Leader or Megasaur, the Consecration won't work. It's going to be tough for her to take this board back and actually be able to keep herself in the game.
Yeah, Pei-Say, to your point, making the read, okay, coin's gone. There's no way a True Silver can come out the next turn. No way a Consecration can come out. I can kind of go a little bit wide on the board. And, in this matchup, because both are so tempo-based and just kind of get minions on the board, build up to critical mass, the coin is really important because that's generally the turn where you want to actually get out there and start asserting yourself and give yourself some degree of a lead. And to your point, she just used it purely defensively. She's like, all right, Tidecaller's much too much of a menace. What if Rockpool Hunter comes down, buffs it? And Rockpool Hunter, I believe, was absolutely the consideration there.
Yeah.
Rockpool Hunter has been an extremely powerful minion for the Murloc set. And has really kind of elevated them in terms of the early game pressure they can put out. I
think it absolutely was the right choice. She either had the other option of doing nothing or just playing the Murloc Tidecaller, which then any Murloc from Pei-Say's side would have been able to kill her own Tidecaller, would have given Pei-Say that much of a lead. But with the coin's minimal mana advantage, you usually want to be able to swing the board and develop on your own side. So she's just been playing on the back foot this whole time, and unfortunately will continue to do so.
Yeah, we see her hand. It's a little bit clunky. She doesn't necessarily have the 1 and 2 mana minions. So unfortunately,
use your words, Rob. It's okay.
I'm trying to. She's got the backup for those minions, but she doesn't quite have the actual minions to play down. So
you're just slowly devolving into a Morlock, where all you'll be able to say is. Mrr.
I wish, man. Being a Murloc must be sweet. You just find like people questing at like level 9. What was it like? Again, you didn't play, but there's one of the early human zones.
Okay.
That was like the proving grounds back in vanilla World of Warcraft. You would go out there level 9 to like the Stone Cairn Lake, and you're just like, oh, this is great. I'm killing NPCs, I'm getting XP, and then 3 Murlocs just like appear behind you and kill you, and you're like, what the heck? What is this? So every time I see Murlocs, that's what I see, whereas everyone else is, oh, the little fish people.
So we get both perspectives on the desk. I say, oh, look, fish people. And
Yeah.
you say, I got brutally slaughtered at a lake while I was fighting NPCs.
Man, I had to go, go to a shrink about it. It's rough stuff out there. These Murlocs are brutal. See, though, the hero power come out for Pay and Say, and then the noble sacrifice. And yeah, just continuing to push a little bit of damage on the board now. This does play into Consecration, but because Pathra doesn't know what the secret is, there is potential concern that it could be a Redemption, possibly Getaway Kodo. And if memory serves, that would bring the Tide Caller back?
Yes, because it was played onto the board first. So even if multiple minions are killed at the same time with Consecration, the minion that was played first will be the one that is brought back to hand or resurrected with Redemption. And Pay and Say ran in the Bluegill Warrior into the 1/1. Seems bad, but actually very good, playing around Blessing of Kings, which could have come out this turn and actually been a way that Pathra could have swung the board around.
All right, well, Pathra evaluating her secret options here. She has Redemption, Repentance, and Getaway Kodo. And in the situation she's in, none of them scream clear do it, but I think Getaway Kodo overall represents the most value. Going ahead and choosing Redemption, though. Now, the Redemption here obviously is not going to get played. She doesn't have the mana, but she might be setting it up for a later turn.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't think honestly she's going to have the mana available to utilize a Getaway Kodo with a minion twice. I don't think she'll have that liberty. So Redemption maybe just helps her fight a little bit stronger on board next turn. It's looking grim either way, especially since Pay and Say has just now picked up a War Leader, and he also has a Kodo, which is a clean kill on that Hydrologist if he just wants to push his own agenda even just a little bit more. And then you're rolling into Tarim turn, and it's looking bad from then on out.
Yeah, the play with Kodo, you trade the 1/1 dude into his friend 1/1 dude, and dudes die.
Yeah.
And then you play the Kodo, as you point, isolate to that Hydrologist, get rid of it. You can tear him the turn after if you really want. Don't know that you necessarily would, but it is an option. You could play that War Leader. I definitely like the clean kill here and continue to just dominate the board, because that's how you're going to win this, I believe, in this particular matchup.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Pathra doesn't have any swing cards in hand to be able to try and take back this board, so Pay and Say will just go with the War Leader and keep pushing damage.
This does pretty clearly telegraph to Pathra that secret is Noble Sacrifice.
Yeah, I think so.
If it is not Noble Sacrifice, then he is really baiting it hard that it is. But to be honest, in this point, if you're Pathra, you have to deal with a Murloc anyway, so of course you're going to test for it. It's not like you're going to play around it too much. You could potentially equip the True Silver Champion to test for it, but again, you're so far behind, your health rapidly going down. We are going to see here the trade into it. Now, she could equip the True Silver Champion and get rid of the Murloc War Leader. That does represent a fair bit of damage going away, but that Tide Caller continues to develop unchecked.
Yeah, that's a big problem for Pathra. And Pay and Say, obviously, a calculated risk with the Noble Sacrifice active, because Consecration would have been a full clear with the Hydrologist on board. But he knew what he's doing.
And he had, there have been turns before where the Consecration was honestly a great play.
You can make a read that it's probably not there. Ooh, that's good too.
Yeah, so at this point, the secret does come down, but for Argentina, there's a very, clear way to check it that's really low impact. Like, if it is Noble Sacrifice, okay, you lose the 1/1 Hero Power Silverhand Covenant, but you're not necessarily losing too much. We are going to see Sunkeeper Tarim come down, so, Pay and Say realistically riding an extremely strong curve.
Well, and it's looking like he's just going to be able to close out the game.
Yep.
Pathra doesn't have any way to clear off these minions. She can heal for 2, but then she also takes 3 because she's forced to attack into the Tarim, so I think that's all she wrote. Yeah, Pathra's going to go ahead and concede, and Pay and Say and Argentina are going to go up to a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, Pay and Say did tell me that, he felt the reason that Spain got that 3-0 victory against Argentina was that, being honest, he said because he wasn't involved. He was at DreamHack Austin. He wasn't able to play. He said he's generally the one being most vocal. He considers him and Null Guidon, some of the best players in the region. So, it's obviously one of those things where the curve lined up really well for Pay and Say, but I think he also played that really well with the Noble Sacrifice interaction to make sure that he was protecting himself. And he made the read that there was no Consecration before he played really heavily into it. So, shout out to Pay and Say, and suddenly up 2-0.
Yeah, hopefully him and Pathra got a chance to speak at DreamHack Austin. Hopefully there's no hard feelings there. And these games haven't been too complex yet. It's obviously been very favored to one side from the beginning of the game. Nothing too crazy happening thus far, but we do have one more that Argentina needs to win to be able to close it out, and it is going to come down to Nalguidan on the Rogue and Flamelord on the Mage. You said Pansay said that him and Nalguidan are the two best players on this team. Now, when you're looking at a name like Snail also, who was at a Hearthstone Championship Tour championship last year, those are some big words.
Yeah, and I think when it comes down to it, Snail, for those who don't remember, he actually got into that championship through the Fireside Gathering Tavern Hero Road, which, shout out to him, that's awesome, and it's a cool story, but there's a difference between somebody who goes out and, they win a tournament, they play well there, and then they go on to compete versus someone, like Nalguidan, he's out there competing constantly.
He's
open
a grinder.
cups, yeah. He's a ladder grinder, open cup player. He's all over Copa America, so, on any given Sunday, anyone can win that tournament. They play well. Things go in their favor. That's the nature of the card game. But for someone who is always working at it and constantly competing, that's kind of the guy you're going to look at and be like, all right, you know what? This is the guy who has the consistent results.
Well, it is going to come down to Nalguidan versus Flamelord. If Nalguidan can take this win, then Argentina will have won 3-0 over New Zealand. So Flamelord, that's a heavy weight on his shoulders to be able to get this win and keep New Zealand in this series.
Yeah, again, he will have the support of his team, however. It's not like any of these players have to take on the weight all by themselves. But I definitely agree. When you're the one playing, when you're the one with the mouse, it does feel like it's on your shoulders. Let's get to know these players a little bit better here. Nalguidan, one of the the top point earner from Argentina in the Hearthstone Championship Tour in 2016 with 60 total points earned. So as you said, this guy's an absolute grinder. He is out there trying to make it big. He's someone on Twitch, who has a substantial following, well-known in LATAM. So Nalguidan is definitely doing his best to kind of promote his story and continue to increase what he is worth in the Hearthstone competitive community. Yeah,
he's doing a great job so far. And Flamelord, also the highest HCT point earner from New Zealand. So the highest point earners in their respective countries. He had 27 points, however, so there's a big discrepancy there. The New Zealand flag bearer at the first World Mind Sports Games in Beijing in 2008. And he played in the HCT and Z qualifiers for the Hearthstone World Championship in 2015. So Flamelord does have some competitive experience.
Yeah, if you're curious what the World Sports Mind Games are, those are bridge, chess, droughts, Go, and Chinese chess. So, yeah, that's,
okay.
Yeah, that's someone who's out there competing in a bunch of different games that realistically can actually, help you in spaces like these because it's all problem solving, it's puzzle recognition, and that's a huge boon for him.
It's a lot of technical play and a lot of problem solving. So that's very cool. I did not know that about Flamelord, but now we're not playing Chinese chess. We're playing Hearthstone, and it's going to come down to him on the Mage versus Nalguidan on the Rogue.
That's that nice analysis you got there.
Those
are two different games.
Those are two games. Let's bring it on back to Hearthstone.
Back in the day, I'm like, Cora, I'm just a big dummy, and I'm just going to host a desk. But I need that analysis, and Cora's like, I got you.
Analysis. I have transitions.
You know the different games. So yeah, for these two players, though, again, kind of coming in, Nalguidan just looking to add another victim to the list. And yeah, to your point, Flamelord looking to protect the team. Now, no surprise to see Quest Rogue. Argentina did bring it against Spain. It seems to be something they're very comfortable with, have recognized the sheer power for, and Glacial Shard in the opening hand. Going to be interesting to see if he pitches it. Now, Glacial Shard, obviously an extremely powerful minion, but tends to shine more against the classes with weapons for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
On the other side, we are seeing what appears to be Freeze Mage. Mage is just all over the place in terms of what the different decks do. There's Gunther Mage, there's Burn Mage, there's Freeze Mage. But the Frost Nova does generally tell us if the Frost package is in there. That is probably more along the lines of traditional Freeze Mage.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And while Gunther Mage has been more popular as of late in competitive play, Freeze Mage certainly is still very strong. And while Pirate Warrior, I would have to say, is the hardest counter to Rogue, Rogues have actually been teching pretty significantly against Pirate Warrior by including copies of Galak Crawler. Glacial Shard obviously slows them down significantly, and we've even been seeing Hungry Crab in some Rogue lists. So they're starting to figure out what the best builds are and how they want to tech for these hard counters. But there is one thing that Rogue can't do, and it's heal. They have absolutely no life gain, and once they're bored, it's a bunch of 5/5s. They may be able to charge, but if they're frozen and you're hurling fireballs at their face, there's not much they can do to stop it.
Yeah, it feels weird to say because realistically we're like, what, a month into Journey to Un'Goro? But back in the day, back in time immemorial in
3
week
weeks
2,
ago.
I was going to say, of the Journey to
when
Un'Goro
Argentina
meta.
played first.
Yeah, Rogue rose to popularity, obviously, off the back of Quest Rogue. Now, Miracle Rogue's still very powerful, but it was Quest Rogue that was really kind of out there giving people fits, and people are like, okay, what is a deck that deals with this? And Freeze Mage, generally speaking, because of Ice Block, because of board freezes, because of the immutable worth of just direct damage, actually kind of found a place kind of picking on the Quest Rogue a little bit. So, in this situation, have to think Flame Lord in New Zealand could turn it around here.
Yeah, and absolutely just looking at his opening hand, it is pretty solid so far. Needing that card draw and having found 2 of those mechanics is pretty good for Flame Lord. And Nalguidan has a very straightforward game plan, as all Quest Rogues do. It is play 4 minions of the same name, finish your quest, play your quest, get a bunch of 5/5s on board, kill your opponent quickly. And right now, Nalguidan does not have definitively a way to complete that quest, but likely with the Igneous Elemental, you're going to see copies of Firefly, Gadgets and Ferryman, Youthful Brewmaster. It's going to be pretty easy. I think we all thought going into Ungoro that the Rogue quest would be kind of steep and a little bit more difficult to finish than it actually is. But if the Rogue has the perfect draw, they can actually complete the quest and play it with preparation by like turn 3.
Yeah, it is a deck that in some respects, if you draw the correct cards, it's just a matter of sequencing them and just going. That said, Freeze Mage can certainly put that plan on its ear because of the freeze mechanics and the ability to basically be immune per turn. But yeah, it's a deck that has been kind of streamlined to get to a point where it has more kind of average outcomes. But when it has that really good outcome, that is a really good outcome. Unfortunately, It doesn't look like Nalguidan has that. He has the one Shadow Step, so that's one bounce effect. But otherwise, he's got just some minions in there right now, and the Mage is going to have time to develop, and that's where this Quest Rogue is going to struggle in this matchup.
It's very important for Flame Lord because Quest Rogue is sort of playing its own game in the first couple of turns, and like you said, when it's good, it's great. But when it's bad, they're playing a bunch of ragtag minions that don't do anything pretty much.
This is literally like every time you've seen like a movie like The Expendables, where it's just, a bunch of like random people just coming together to accomplish the mission and save the world.
Have you ever seen The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Sadly, yes.
D-list superheroes with really terrible powers.
Yeah.
But when they come together, they make magic happen. That's Quest Rogue.
It's like Bilefin Tidehunter, what do you bring to the team? It's like, well, I make a small ooze with a taunt.
It's like, I'm invisible, but only when people aren't looking at me.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I'm a 5/5.
That's a great name. I think I'm going to call the Quest Rogue deck, if I ever build it again, and I doubt I will, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So, what's your power? I have charge if you have a weapon equipped. Ooh, the Avengers are just shaking their head. Those are not good powers. But, yeah, we see the Igneous Elemental coming down. Now, obviously, when Igneous Elemental dies, it makes 2 copies. So, that's makes 2 copies of a minion, which naturally plays into the win condition of that deck. But that's pretty much all that is going for Nalguidan. And wow, okay, so Flame Lord actually choosing here to not even put the 1 damage on the opposing minion just to get the card draw.
I can see reasons for both of these. If you don't put 1 damage on it, then it's, I guess, less likely that Nalguidan's able to kill the Igneous Elemental. But at the same time, if you do put 1 damage on it, then he can't backstab it and run it into the Acolyte. So, yeah, I get the reasoning. I think... Personally, I maybe would have liked to play around Backstab, but we're also not seeing Backstab at every Quest Rogue list. So ultimately, Flame Lord just needs to ensure that Nalguidan does not get copies of minions that he can play very cheaply. And by not attacking Igneous Elemental, that's accomplishing his goal.
Yeah, Igneous Elemental can't give you Flame Elementals when it dies if it never dies.
Exactly.
Little bit of sagely wisdom for you kids at home thinking, wow, what do I want to do with this Igneous Elemental? You want it to die.
Kill it. Kill it with fire.
Yep. It's your friend, but
or
you need
water,
it to die.
However you want to do it.
Yeah. Now, New Zealand collecting the burn pieces. We see the 2 fireballs. We see Alexstrasza. So, I mean, the play is really there if they can survive long enough already. And they have more cycle. This is actually at least in this matchup, you really do want to collect the burn in the top half of your deck and just get to a point where you just go. Ideally, you'd like to have a little bit more minion pressure. Now, Arcanologist as a 2/3 doesn't seem that intimidating, but those early pings of Arcanologist hitting for 2 damage, mixed in with some hero powers, along with, say, Medivh's Valet, can actually start pushing chip damage that is extremely relevant. Alexstrasza, thankfully, will probably end up, if this ends up being a win for New Zealand, getting Argentina to 15, but those are useful applications of those minions where you traditionally don't look at them and think, oh, well, the front half of the attack is necessarily that deadly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the traditional game plan for the Freeze Mage is take it late, Alexstrasza them to the face, and have many cheap burn spells with which you can kill them on the following turn from 15. Usually, the Quest Rogue does not give you that much time, but thus far, it's been a very slow start for Nalgwidan, so maybe Flame Lord will be able to get to that point, especially since he hasn't had a lot of early minion combat. But even just looking at this, there's 12 from Fireballs, an additional 6 from Frostbolt, so still a bit of a ways to go for New Zealand, but they're starting to bring the damage together.
Yeah, at this point, they just have to realistically survive. I'm trying to think. They would have to survive until turn 11 to combo all that. Well,
yes. Well, if they can go 4 more turns and Alex on 9, then they can double Fireball Frostbolt
yep.
on 10.
So it'd actually be, turn 10 kill right there. So they're in a spot now where the play is just basically like, okay, you have the damage you need. Let's just survive. This rogue deck is not running healing.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually looking quite good. They have a second Ice Block in hand, now Barrier, which will be 8 additional health, and, obviously Frost Nova and Blizzard in deck. So,
yeah,
it's looking pretty good for New Zealand.
Switch it to cruise control, go make yourself a sandwich and just come back on turn 9. Alexstrasza, turn 10, win the game.
It's like every Freeze Mage player out there is just standing up saying, I told you so. Freeze Mage will never die, we won't let it.
George C says his deck is complicated. Look how easy it is. You just wait until 9, Alexstrasza, then kill him on 10. Easy game. All right, well, into the hand now. There is a way for Nalgwidan to actually get the 4 procs of the minion with those Flame Elementals, Gadgets, and Ferryman, and the copy of Shadow Step. So things are progressing for him, but as we said, this was frankly kind of a middling to below average result in terms of when you're actually completing the quest.
This is slow for the Rogue, unfortunately. They are usually able to complete the quest, I would say, by turn 5 or by this turn, so not too much delayed, but every turn is going to matter even more against a deck that benefits so much when it has just that little bit of additional time. And Freeze Mage is naturally putting the Rogue on a clock, so you just need to clock him even faster.
Yeah, Nalgwidan considering here if he wants to just try to go wide on the board, put a bunch of minions down, and activate the quest next turn. Goes ahead, though, and uses the dagger there to get rid of the Acolyte of Pain. Still figuring out to do with that last bit of mana.
The thing is, even if Nalgwidan were to play the Flame Elemental, Shadow Step, and complete the quest this turn, he wouldn't be able to prep out Crystal Core. So
players everywhere breathe a sigh of relief as you need at least 2 mana to prep out the Crystal Core. You can't do it on 1.
Thankfully, there is some reprieve from the reign of the Quest Rogue. So
would have liked to actually maybe see a Glacial Shard come out on that Arcanologist, since you're not going to be using it to stall things out. I'm sure there are reasons not to, but, obvious thing is the Arcanologist at that point can't kill one of your Flame Elementals. That's going to be a 5/5 if no burn is used on it. But choosing not to there, as I said, probably a reason for that. And Flame Lord actually, milling a card just because of the sheer amount of wealth in his hand. Thankfully, it doesn't actually do anything to interfere with his win condition, which is, again, pretty much just set. He just needs to survive until turn 10.
Yeah, Flame Lord has, fortunately, everything that he needs to win the game, but if that had been Frost Nova or Blizzard, it could have actually been fairly detrimental, because he does need to make it to turn 10 to win the game, so turn 9 with an Ice Block up is essentially going to be game. And Nalgwidan's going to finish the quest this turn. He's got Chargers in hand. He has quite a bit of board presence.
I'm telling you, he could literally just walk away from the computer and just have someone occasionally click some buttons and just go out and do the rest of his day.
Well, I don't want to give the audience the perception that Hearthstone is quite that easy, Rob.
Well, I mean, this Freeze Mage deck, I'm just telling you, like, Alexstrasza 9 win on 10. But yeah, you're not in a situation as Freeze Mage where things are this lined up for you, and there are other decks that aren't just trying to kill you with a quest.
Yeah, to be fair, you're also not usually in a situation where your opponent is playing 1-mana minions every turn until turn 7.
Yeah. Yeah, usually there's a...
Sometimes they play a 2-mana minion, or a minion buff.
Or something that gives you health.
A weapon.
Yeah. This is definitely one of the better situations for Freeze Mage in general. So.
Yeah, just no pressure up until this point.
Yep.
And to be fair, now that the Rogue has turned the corner, the pressure is going to be put on very heavily. So Flame Lord's still going to need to find a board freeze here, I think, and then he should have it locked up.
Yeah. It's, there is a world where Nalgwidan can push out some damage over 2 turns and potentially make this closer. But again, we see the second Ice Block in hand. We see the Ice Barrier in hand. If if New Zealand can just find that one Frost Nova, honestly,
Well, that's
they're
pretty bad.
they're pretty much set. Okay, so there is a lot of damage on the board here for Argentina.
Yeah, Nagvidon has potentially 31 with the South Sea Deckhand in hand and the dagger. Flame Lord does have an ice block up, and he's sitting at 29.
I mean, realistically, the 4 left cards in your hand as New Zealand, those are earmarked to win the game. So just
like,
look
this
at,
is win condition.
you're evaluating your survival up to turn 10 based on the remaining cards on the right of those 4 cards.
So Barrier gives you an additional 8, sets you to 37. You could Arcane Intellect and try to find Frost Nova, but you can't Intellect into Blizzard. You won't have the mana. So what do you want to go with first?
I mean, you could. The thing is, one of those Frost Bolts is expendable. You can use it to freeze out a minion. You could trade the 2 minions on board and a ping into the ooze. But yeah, with 3 cards in hand, you have to be wary of bounce effects. You haven't seen very many. There is definitely just a world where if you don't put up the Ice Barrier, the secret could just be popped with bounces.
Flame Lord's block gets popped. He will have the next barrier to put up along with the second block, but it's actually quite scary.
Thankfully, we do see the Blizzard come into hand. Well, thankfully, if you are New Zealand, the Blizzard does come into hand, so that is going to slow the game down a fair bit. Now, 15 damage on board for Argentina, and they do have the ability to charge out another 5 with that South Sea Deckhand upon equipping the dagger, but that's only 20. And block remains unpopped.
Yeah, I think the game honestly came down to whether or not Nagvidon could pop the block this turn. If he did, Flame Lord would have been able to respond with either Blizzard or second block, but not both. And then I think he would have just been pushed too far into the corner, wouldn't actually have had a way to win. But the Frostbolt and the Hero Power to essentially stop 2 of the 5 attack minions, I think was going to be enough here.
Yeah, like I said, the only thing that's hard about this matchup at this point for New Zealand is figuring out what's in the contents of the hand. At least one of them is Flame Elemental, because it is 0 mana. You have seen it Shadow Stepped, but if the other cards are, potentially useful Brewmaster, Gadgets, and Ferryman, and Charge Minions, things can get a little hairy at that point.
I mean, you've seen the left 2 cards in Nagvidon's hand for the majority of the game now, so I think you can get a read that they're either charge minions or like maybe a copy of Mimic Pod that he hadn't had time to use for whatever reason.
I gotta think the play here. Well, Flame Geyser would actually deal with one of the minions, but you're getting ready to Blizzard.
Yeah.
So that minion's gonna die anyway. So I do think Ice Barrier, and again, you are looking at this play like everything's already done. Like everything is already lined up. So Ice Barrier, I think, in a vacuum makes the most sense here. But there could be arguments for the Flame Geyser there.
I mean, I don't think it honestly matters much. Flame Geyser, 0 mana, 2 damage, and turn 9 is going to be Alex Strauss in Nagvidon's face. Then it's going to be double Fireball Frostbolt for 15 damage, turn 10 lethal. So this is all locked up from New Zealand's side, unless Argentina has some secret tech, like Eater of Secrets in hand, which, some Quest Rogues are playing, but here that's not going to be
Vanish.
the case.
I think Vanish actually would have, the block gets popped, and then you reapply the ice block.
Well, actually, Nagvidon vanishes, pops block this turn. Flame Lord then is forced to play second ice block.
Yeah, but it's still fine.
Well, it's not, because then Flame Lord can't Alex
right.
Straza on the same turn. That's actually not fine at all. So the fact that Nagvidon was able to pop the block this turn through the Blizzard actually is...
Yeah, we completely lost track of that patches too there because it's been so long. And usually the patches comes out on a Swashbuckler or usually the South Sea Deckhand earlier. But yeah, suddenly this is looking pretty hairy.
So you can set up block, and then you have 6 mana, so you can Fireball Frostbolt. Even Pyroblast then wouldn't be enough to kill Nagvidon. Even Fireball Frostbolt Flame Geyser would only be 11 with Pyroblast 21. Ooh.
Yeah, that Vanish off the top was very much a game changer. Yeah.
That was a big deal.
You need to be able to bounce a bunch of minions.
To be fair, Argentina could have picked up any charge minion at that point, and it would have been enough to pop the block with the addition of the patches coming off of the South Sea Deckhand.
Yeah. Man, New Zealand's just like, what happened? Things were going so well. We had board just locked up. That they definitely needed to kind of draw into more of the freezing package early on. But again, part of the problem with freeze in this matchup is while it's effective for about half the minions, the rest of the minions do have charge. And obviously you can't deal with that with freezes anyway.
I mean, Flame Lord, he puts down the block simply because he has to or he's dead. He's going to go with the burn face plan, but I don't see how this ends up working out for him. Argentina pops block at 1. They're still at 17. Unless like a glyph picking up another ice block were to come up for New Zealand. I think that's pretty much the only way out. Would be second primordial glyph into ice block.
Yeah, and when we were
or
talking about
Kabbalist tome ice block.
When we were talking about the Discover earlier and I was advocating for Ice Barrier, I mean, the thing is, Flame Lord already has the Ice Barrier in hand now. The only thing that would have changed is that would have made it slightly cheaper, whereas the Flame Geyser does give you additional reach if it comes down to it. So that definitely makes the Flame Geyser feel like the superior pick. But yeah, both blocks gone. And, you know, we talked that this is a matchup that is, you know, on paper for the Freeze Mage, certainly one that looks good against the Quest Rogue, but you know, we saw why that it's impossible at this point for a lot of matchups to say that favored is necessarily like a definitive statement.
Yeah, favorite in Hearthstone right now is usually, you know, at best maybe 60-40, 65-35. There's not.
I was gonna say there are some keystone matchups. You know, the Jade Druid, for example, versus Freeze Mage is very difficult for the Freeze Mage.
There's not really a matchup that is unwinnable for any deck in the meta right now, but Flame Lord failing to draw any of those Frost Novas to actually shut down the board once Argentina was able to get it going, which, you know, to be fair, took a fair amount of time for the Quest Rogue. I think the Quest Rogue failed to put on a lot of pressure early on, but ultimately it didn't matter. And this is just Quest Rogue doing what it does best.
Yeah, we see Nalguidan kind of already getting to that point where he's getting a little bit fidgety. He's ready to celebrate the win. And yeah, that is going to do it now. Argentina going 6-0 against the ANZ sub-region there.
Yeah, that was very impressive. A rather quick match, I think. But well played by Argentina and New Zealand, unfortunately. Nothing really coming together for them this game. I do kind of wonder because New Zealand had an Acolyte of Pain on board early and elected not to draw with it over the course of several turns. Maybe if they'd been able to dig just a little bit deeper into their deck, they could have found Blizzard a turn earlier. That second Blizzard we saw come into hand later on, maybe that would have made a difference because they just needed time at that point. They needed Argentina to not pop their block, and then they had the game on lock if they got to turn 9 with a block still active. But, you know, either way, ultimately, that went in favor of Argentina, and now they have a dominant performance in the books against New Zealand.
Yeah, you know, they went 3-0 to 0-3 to 3-0, so I think
there's
it's safe
no
to
in
say,
between with these guys.
I'd say it's a streaky team, but let's go ahead and take a look at the final score here. As we said, Ildami versus Ting Tong, fairly straightforward again. We did see that the Pirate Warrior kind of had a rough go of that one. And then Pay and Say versus Pathra. You know, Pay and Say played it pretty well. He did what he needed to do to play around certain board sweeps and clears, and then was able to beat Pathra. And that one, you know, again, that was looking like for a long time that Flame Lord did have that set up. And yeah, to your point, it wasn't just Vanish that was an out for Nalguidan. There were others as well. And, you know, to Nalguidan's credit, you know, it's one of those things where he was clearly playing around that.
Yeah, to Nalguidan's credit, he's a fantastic rogue player. So he knew exactly what he was doing there, and it all just ended up working out very well for him. So here we can see the Group C standings. Argentina coming in at the number 2 spot with a 2-1 match record. And now New Zealand still definitely in it. They can get out of this group with a top 3 finish. They're at 1-1, but their game record is just slightly worse than Spain's.
Yeah, and I got to be honest, I'm starting to become a fan of the whole LATAM region there in general.
It's a great region. It really is.
And they're people, they're passionate about the game. They have passionate fans. You know, the countries are all talking to each other in between matches, cheering for each other. We see them out there on social media.
Their Twitter exchanges are great. They're very confident, and they really love Hearthstone, and they think that they're a region that needs to have more representation and needs to be better respected in the Hearthstone world. And I think we're seeing great performances by them thus far in global games. So I'm really excited that we get to cast so much of the South American region. Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun. But we have Pay and Say standing by to actually talk about that series. Pay and Say, can you hear me, man?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Congratulations. Oh, you know what? I'm good. Just up here casting some Hearthstone. How are you, man? 3-0.
Doing great. Hi, Gora.
Hi, Pay and Say. How you doing?
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier today that coming into this, you guys were feeling really confident about the matchup. You thought to yourself, okay, we got 3-0'd by Spain, but we'll just do better.
Yeah, I mean, our lineup was fine last week. We just got unlucky, I feel. But I don't know. I feel like we work really well together. Pretty confident about us, our players too.
Yeah, so coming into this, what is your expectation, really, your whole team's expectations for how far Argentina is going to go in the Hearthstone Global Games?
First, we want to make it out of the groups, of course. Just move to a second stage. I don't know, just take it step by step and see where we get.
Okay, and one final question for you. When it comes to preparation each week, how does the preparation for the Argentinian team look?
The first week, we prepared together. We work a lot of preparation for the first match. But then the last week, we didn't prepare that much, to be honest. We were all busy doing our own stuff. I was getting ready for my flight to DreamHack, Austin, and preparing my lineup for there. And one of the guys from that guidance was getting ready for Copa America and South American Major too. So we're all really busy, and we basically play the same lineup this week, the week 2 and the last 2 weeks, the last 2 matches, we play the same lineup. And I don't know, we got 3-0 the first one, and now we won 3-0. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's very impressive, for what you guys have done, especially against both Australia and New Zealand. Actual final question: is there anything you want to say to your fans out there in Argentina who are cheering for you guys?
Thank you. Thanks to everyone for the support. A lot of people, like everyone there, is watching us. We are a really close community, and they are really super supportive in social media, just talking to us all the time, wishing us good luck and stuff like that. And that really helps. Like, it means a lot.
Awesome. Well, congratulations once again. Looking forward to see how you do in your next game. Pay and Say, thank you so much.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, so a very solid performance. And, as he said, last week they didn't really have a chance to prepare. They weren't sitting there playing as a team. Pay and Say was absent. This time he comes back. He's like, all right, guys, we got the Rioed. Let's not panic. Let's just practice and go out there and play our game. And Argentina obviously having that success again.
Yeah, they got schooled a little bit, came back stronger than ever. And I think very similarly, we got schooled on the pronunciation of Nalgaiden's name. And now next time we have Argentina on stream, we can come back even stronger and pronounce it correctly at least 9 times out of 10.
We'll do better next time.